Hello and welcome to yet another virtual event with Tattered Cover Bookstore. For those of you who don't know, Tattered Cover is an independent bookstore, the largest in Colorado. We are based in Denver with multiple locations in the suburbs and we're soon to be opening one in Colorado Springs. So if you're in Denver, if you're in Colorado, you can find us. If you're not from Denver, if you're not from Colorado and you're finding us because of this amazing panel tonight, you can check us out at tatteredcover.com. We do a lot of virtual events still, so tatteredcover.com/events. My name is Adam. I'm the director of events, and I love panels. I love seeing writers come together, so I'm so stoked for this one. We called it the Valentine's Mystery panel. That was just because it's Valentine's Day. These books don't necessarily have anything to do with Valentine's Day, but we have three amazing writers and then an amazing moderator tonight. I'm going to read their bios and then introduce and then let them come on. Michelle Helen Klump is a former newspaper reporter who covered government, courts, and crime throughout Arkansas and Central Texas. Still a working journalist, she is also a member of Sisters in Crime. Her short fiction has appeared in Crimson Streets and Tales of Texas Volume 2, a Houston short story anthology. Nikki Knight is the pen name of the award-winning longtime New York radio news anchor. She grew up in Western Pennsylvania and started her radio career as a teenage DJ there. After college, she worked at a small radio station in Vermont and loved the town and the people, but not the snow. Her career led to larger and more prestigious newsrooms, but she still hasn't managed to escape from the snow. She lives in Connecticut with her husband and son in a house owned by their cat. Her Vermont story, Bad Apples, recently won an honorable mention in the Black Orchid Novella Contest. And Holly Danvers grew up devouring every mystery novel on the shelf of her local library. She lives in the Midwest with her husband and three chickens, where she's already plotting her next novel. They are the three authors who have books out now: A Dash of Death, Live Local and Dead, long overdue at the Lakeside Library. Please welcome them and welcome Dulce Vitello, who works at their publisher, who will be moderating this amazing event. Ladies, hello and welcome to our Valentine's Mystery panel. I'm going to hop off and just turn it over to you. Congratulations. I believe it's all your publication day today.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Dulce, thank you for doing this. I'll hop off. Anyone out there on YouTube watching, you can put your questions on YouTube and I'll get them to these amazing writers, but I'm going to stop talking. I've been talking too much. Have a great night. Congratulations on your publication.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you, ladies. I'm very excited to be part of the conversation tonight. So first, I'd like to introduce all of you and your books. So you start by telling me a little bit about each of your books and a little bit about yourselves. And we can start with Michelle.
Great, thank you so much. So as Adam mentioned, I'm Michelle Klump. I'm a former newspaper reporter, much like my main character. And so in A Dash of Death, my main character, Samantha Warren, thinks she's at the worst part of her life. She's lost her job. She's lost her fiance 3 weeks before the wedding. She's stuck with hundreds of bottles of homemade cocktail bitters that she had made to give away as favors for the wedding. Doesn't know what she's going to do with her life. And then her best friend decides to get her out of her funk, and she invites her to serve cocktails and sell her bitters at a historic association home tour. Everything's going fabulous, life is looking up, but then, of course, somebody has to die while drinking one of her cocktails. Ooh. And so while she thought that she had hit the bottom, now she's really at the bottom, and she is now stuck trying to extricate herself from the situation and solve the mystery. So the story is, I like to say, it's about cocktails, about historic homes, and of course, murder. And then sort of at the heart of it is a woman who has had a lot of struggles in her life, who needs to learn how to trust herself again.
Very good, very nice, thank you. Nikki?
Great, thank you. I'm a radio news anchor now in New York. I started out in my hometown of Western Pennsylvania as a teenage DJ, as it's in the bio. And one of my first jobs on the way up was working as a one-person news department in Vermont. And that inspired a lot of what's in Live, Local, and Dead, which is about that and a lot of life stuff. It's about Jay Jordan, who is a New York City DJ whose husband survives cancer, but their marriage doesn't. And she ends up in Vermont running the radio station where she started off as a kid. across the river from her husband, who's in Charlestown, New Hampshire now, her ex, who's in Charlestown, New Hampshire now. And what happens basically is that a body turns up in the snowman in front of the radio station, and he turns out to be the talk show host whose show she just got rid of. And she finds herself in the middle of this insane plot by the involving the guy who replaced the talk show, wants to replace the talk show host. And then all of a sudden her old crush shows up and he's the governor now, and it's going to be interesting.
It does sound very interesting. I'm about halfway through the book, so I'm waiting for
by the way, the farting moose. I forgot the farting moose. That's important.
And Holly, how about you?
Hi, first of all, I just wanted to say congratulations, ladies, on your releases today. Happy book birthday. So
Happy
exciting.
book birthday.
It's so exciting to be able to release a book. So I'm here to talk about the Lakeside Library Mystery Series. And actually, I'm releasing the second book today. The first one released in July and the second one releases today. But the story follows Rain, and she unfortunately recently lost her husband, and she's kind of reeling from this loss and decides she's going to go up north and spend some time in her family's log cabin and just sort of spend some time alone and just go through the grieving process. But when she gets there, she finds out that her mom has put her in charge of taking care of their local library, which is attached to their house. And so she now becomes sort of a library director in the middle of all of this. And of course, the body's found on the property and, yada, 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 mystery ensues.
Very exciting. Like I said, I'm halfway through through Nikki's book. Sorry. So I have the other two on my to be read piles, so I'm ready to dig into those as well. And so all of you have such a wide range of topics. Could you, we got librarians, a radio DJ, a caterer. So could you tell us a little bit about how you decided to pick the direction that you went in? Why, maybe it's art imitating life. So we can start with Michelle again.
Sure. So, they always say, write what you know. And as I said, I'm obviously a former newspaper reporter. So that was the first easy step. And then the next step, the cocktail aspect. So that came from, well, I guess as a cozy reader, I like to read cozies that sort of teach me something new, like you can learn about home renovation or winemaking or beer making or sewing or knitting. Or I like ones that have sort of a hook that you can learn something interesting from. But to be able to write that convincingly, you have to be able to be interested in the topic. So I wanted to find something that I was interested in. And I have sort of a hobby of cocktail making and bitters making and stuff like that. And so I thought those would be sort of a fun thing to marry together.
Yeah, very nice. Nikki?
I started writing a version of this story 7 years ago when my son started kindergarten. I wrote a much different version, which was basically Janet Evanovich, basically Stephanie Plum and a moose. And there were three guys, and it was a bad ripoff of Janet Evanovich. If I'm anything, I'm not her, and I love her, and that's wonderful. But there's only one of her. And then I put that down and went on and did an historical mystery series, which is published now from a different publisher. And during that time came back to, while I was waiting for that to come out, came back to Vermont with everything I had learned from getting into, the querying process and writing, and this family health crisis that was going on during the whole thing, and ended up with a main character who is now a struggling single mother who's been through this stuff with her husband and is starting over, and the whole process of starting over in a new place. And so there's a lot about that. And also a lot of stuff about the radio business, because I'm a working radio journalist. I'm a weekend anchor in New York. And the radio business has changed since I started. And sometimes I feel like we're the last people standing. And there's a lot of that feeling in this book, the feeling that, you're not doing it for the front office, you're doing it for your listeners and for your colleagues. And that's a big theme in the story.
And Holly?
So for me, my husband and I lived in a log cabin for like 6 years, and it was just a really cool experience. And there's something very warm and cozy about being surrounded by logs and nature and trees. And I'm a nature person. I mean, through and through. You'll find me walking the trails around here all the time because I just love being outside. And so I think that part and the whole North Woods of Wisconsin was a draw for me too. We spend a lot of time up there. And so I thought, well, what if I put my love of books and my love of the cabin and sort of put them together and make a log cabin library? And so that's kind of how it started.
Yes.
The location does sound very lovely.
Yeah.
You need to come visit.
I may have to take a trip.
Yes, you're more than welcome.
Okay, so this question's for Michelle. So I've heard that you have a hobby for cocktail mixing. You just mentioned that you were interested in the topic before writing your book. So was this something that grew as you wrote the book, or did you decide maybe I like it, but it wasn't so much for me? And if you do like it, what is your favorite cocktail to make so far?
Sure. Well,
I'm getting thirsty.
Yeah. So it definitely came before the book. So there was this great bar in Houston. It's called Anvil, and they I think they opened about 10 years ago or so, and they sort of were one of the leading edge of sort of the craft cocktail craze. And so we would go there, and they had this awesome list of 100 greatest cocktails of all time. And I thought it was just such a cool thing because I always like to try something different, but every time I would go someplace, I could never think of something to make. And they had this great list. So we always enjoyed going there. But then we had our child, and then realized, well, we can't really go out so much anymore. But if we want to still socialize, we need to learn how to make cocktails. So yeah, my husband and I just have this hobby of liking to make different things. And I have tried, so part of the book is a little aspirational as opposed to autobiographical, because I'm nowhere near as talented as Samantha is at making bitters and things like that. I've had a few, flat ginger beer and some not so tasty bitters, but I'm willing to keep trying, and I like to keep trying, and it's just sort of fun. So, and in terms of my favorite recipe, it's really depends on the season. So in the winter, I like things more a little spicy, a little apple flavored, stuff like that. In the summer, I'm definitely more of a tiki, anything tiki. But since we're in the winter, I'll say my favorite cocktail right now, it's something called the Lion and the Lamb. And it has bourbon, and it has allspice dram, and it has lime juice, and it has bitters, and it's just this really nice, warm, cozy drink to drink while you're reading the Cozy Mystery.
That sounds good. Let's see, Nikki. So since you work at a radio station in real life, are there any scenes from Live, Local, and Dead based on a real event or inspired by something you've done at work? And how did you incorporate your real life passion into the book?
There's a number of things that my radio colleagues will recognize. One of them is that we have Jay has a listener at WSB, the radio station, who always calls and requests Bob Marley. He's called the Marley Dude. And every radio station has one of those or several of those. He's inspired by the White Rabbit guy from my hometown, who would always call and request Jefferson Starship's White Rabbit. But so that's one that I've incorporated. And just the other thing about that is really that from real life and also in the inspiration of the book is just how close we are to our colleagues. A lot of times what we do is, we're doing it for each other. We test headlines out on each other in the newsroom, for example, or we'll talk about things. We want to do good and be good for each other and for our listeners. And that connection to the listeners is really important. That comes through a lot. There's an ice storm in the book. And at one point, Jay reflects on being on the air, and the only voice people might have in their house is a battery-powered radio. And her voice on the battery-powered radio is what connects people to the world. And she talks about how powerful a feeling that is. And that's from an experience I've had during hurricanes in New York. you know, it's one of it's the thing I'm proudest of, other than raising my kid, that I was there for people when they needed it. It's a thing, and it's a thing that we feel very strongly. So I got that in the book.
No, I think that's very nice. I think like, especially with cozies, you have that like community, that connection
Yes.
with
Yes,
each one.
the whole town, the town rallies around Jay, and that's a real that was something I wanted to make sure got in there. Yeah.
Lovely. Holly, I also have one individual question for you. So in your Lakeside Library series, we're taken into this peaceful cabin. You mentioned that they were inspired by where you live. So what made you choose this particular spot rather than a previous place that you've lived?
Okay, so well, I actually married into the cabin lifestyle, if you will. In the Northwoods of Wisconsin, it's very common for people to go up north and spend the weekend or, you know, summers on the lake. And so the first time I went up there with him, I just remember walking out on the pier, and the water was so clear. The clarity, you could see like 8 feet down, and you could see fish and crawfish. And I was just stunned. I mean, I didn't think that we had that in our state. And so I think I wanted people around the world to be able to experience the beauty up there. I mean, it's just stunning. I encourage all of you to come and visit. Live in a cabin anymore. I actually live in Green Bay now, but we do go up to the Northwoods a lot. And I did, however, change the name to Lofty Pines. There is no Lofty Pines in Wisconsin, but I wanted it to be a place where people could relate to any lake community and sort of taking it as their own. And I also don't like to really use a real town, because I like to play around with the town. And if I don't want, you know, a coffee shop, then I'm not going to have one. So it gives me the freedom to be able to sort of play. But the setting is very much Northwoods, Wisconsin. And I think people that live in the area would definitely recognize the weather too plays a part. In my latest release, The Long Overdue, there's a lot of snow. So if you don't want snow, don't read this one. This will have you snowed in for days.
We'll just stay away during the winter months, you know, but we'll make sure to visit after. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about your inspiration and when you got your ideas. So what inspired each of you to begin your writing career? What, who, and does that same thing still inspires you at the moment? And we'll go the same way with Michelle. We'll start with Michelle.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, I've just been, love to write ever since I was a little kid. And I've loved mysteries ever since I read my first Nancy Drew book, as I'm sure all of us did, right?
Yeah.
Which is the gateway into all mystery. And so, yeah, it's just a love of telling the stories, telling any stories. It's the same thing that took me into journalism, is I love telling stories. So yeah, it definitely still inspires me today. And it's just fun to get to be able to, you know, create a whole new world, like Holly was saying, just create something out of thin air and yeah, just take readers along for the ride.
Nikki?
Yeah, I wrote my first book when I was first manuscript, when I was 16, and actually tried to sell it. And I actually got a couple of editors to read it. Fortunately, they did not buy it. And fortunately, there is no such thing out there with my name on it now, because I wouldn't want that. But, you know, then, you know, college and life and work happened. And when my son started kindergarten, I thought, gee, maybe we'll try this again. And I wrote the Vermont Mystery, the first version of the Vermont Mystery. And I had 200 some rejections between that and a couple of other projects before I got signed. And so it was a very difficult process. And the only reason that I kept going was because my husband, who thought he married a sensible journalist and got this crazy writer woman, stood behind me. And my son, who at the time was tiny, he was a first grader, was always behind me too. Didn't understand all of it, but he understood enough to, one day I was crying because I'd gotten another rejection, you know, the old, I'm never going to sell my book. he got a quarter out of his piggy bank and came up to me and said, "Mom, I'll buy your book."
Oh,
Oh, that's precious.
First signed copy goes to him every time. And he hates when I tell that story, so
Oh, that's
God forbid he
sweet.
ends up on YouTube and finds this.
that is very cute. Holly?
What I forgot the question. What inspires me? I guess I've been writing for a while now. This is my 7th publication.
Wow.
So I would say, you know, I too like grew up reading Nancy Drew. I love a puzzle mystery. I love being curious. I'm curious about people. I'm curious about their motivations. I'm curious about what makes people do what they do. I watch a lot of Dateline. Just saying, I'm gonna admit it. Forensic Files is like one of my favorite shows. So I think it's just trying to understand the human spirit and understand, you know, why people do the things they do is part of my process too, about mystery and trying to find out like what people's motives are. I mean, that just keeps me curious. Writing is one of those things that there's always something new. There's always something new to write about. So it's fun. I love it. Today is happy birthday. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's so exciting. Yeah, I woke up today and I was like, it's publication day. I hope you guys have all had a wonderful day too. So I have it's one of my favorite questions. So if your book was made into a film, who would you cast as your lead? And again, we'll go around with Michelle.
Okay. Yeah, I struggle a little bit to decide who, but I think I decided Emma Stone, just because I love her. She's like the perfect, like, you know, she can be perky, but she can also be serious, and she can be sort of like your down to earth girl, but she can also be glammed up. So I just think she's awesome. So her.
I'd go with Jill Hennessy, because she has the big voice and she's got kind of that attitude, you know, if you remember Crossing Jordan, you know, she was a feisty attitude and she's got that big voice. She'd be a terrific Jane.
And
This was a tough one for me to think about because normally when I write a series, I actually will take pictures off the internet and do a whole board of like what I think they look like and just to keep myself straight. And I didn't do it for the series. But I was thinking about it and I would say probably look wise, maybe Olivia Munn, but that's more of the look, not necessarily the personality. So that's a good question. That's a tough one.
it's one of my favorites because I always cast every book that I'm reading. It's like, who would play? But those are all really good choices. So now when I continue reading the books, that's how I'm going to picture. So next question. You guys all have a passion for writing, as you've mentioned. And it has been a lot of fun working on each one of your books. I know for myself and like for the rest of the team, from beginning conception all the way to marketing and putting it out there. But what is the thing that you love most about writing and crafting a story? I know we've touched a little bit on the previous questions, so we can continue with that.
Sure. So I think it's just the creating of a puzzle part, because that's my favorite part of a mystery is trying to come up with a puzzle. And really, I'm what they call a pantser rather than a plotter. I start out with a brief outline, and I don't necessarily. I mean, I usually know who's going to die, but I don't necessarily know who killed them. And so the fun part to me is like writing it and then like figuring out what's going to happen, and then going in at the end and adding in like red herring here or there, some misdirection. So just the crafting of the puzzle part is the fun part to me.
I like to go to my happy place and hang out with my favorite people. I mean, I'm character driven, and I'm a semi-pantser. I get the opening and the close first and then mount my way in. And I just like to go to a place that I really like and be around these characters who I really love. I mean, they're real to me like they are to all of us. And I like to go hang out with my people.
And Holly.
I would say for me, writing is one of the few things that I do in my life where I'm completely present. Meaning when I'm writing, nothing else matters. I mean, a bomb could go off in my house and I would probably keep typing. I just am so engrossed in what I'm doing, which is very rare in my life because normally I'm doing, 15 different things and I've got things on my mind. But when I'm writing, it's like, it's magic to me. It's pure magic because it's a time where I get to, like they said, explore these places. I'm a pantser too. I know, that there's going to be a murder and I know that someone killed them and that's about all I know. And I love the characters revealing themselves to me, like meeting a new friend and sort of getting to know them as you write. It's magic.
Sort of like a follow-up on that question, then do you all set sort of like time aside to write? And like, I know that you mentioned that you didn't so much do planning as like, what happens, but, or is it like, oh, I have this idea, I'm gonna, take 10 minutes and do it, or 15 minutes and type it up?
So my process, I have a day job, which is demanding, and then I have an 8-year-old, which is also demanding. And so really it's just a matter of getting the words on the page. And so I try to have like a word count of like, I set it pretty low, like 400 words a day. And then obviously I shoot for more than that. But if I get the 400 that I feel pretty good about myself, then I just go for, the best writing advice I ever got was just to write the messy first draft. Don't worry about trying to get it perfect the first time because I can't, then I would never finish. So write those 400 words a day, get the messy first draft, and then the rest is just sort of the fun part.
Anywhere I have time, I have 5 minutes in a flat surface with a laptop. This past year, my son was on virtual school and I'm writing, like I said, anytime I can, I'm writing something. And a lot of times what I'll do, particularly with a short story or a chapter or something, is just get an idea while I'm walking or exercising or doing some mindless thing and take 5 minutes, those 5 minutes, and write down, 1 or 2 sentences of what this is, save the file and go back to it when I have time.
That's the one thing I am actually strict upon, is I'm very strict about how I write. I write every morning. I have a word count that I have to meet. I will sit at that computer until I meet that word count. And then usually the next day or that afternoon, I'm thinking and plotting the next day's writing. And so then the following day I go and read everything I wrote the previous day and edit. And then I go on to the next word count and I don't leave it again. Some days I'm done by 10 o'clock in the morning. Some days I'm done at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Some days it's like 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, yeah. So, but if I don't reach that word count, I am not leaving the chair. So, especially when I'm in the first draft, because it's just, you got to get, like she said, you got to get those words on the page. It can be messy. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you got to let it out. Get it on paper.
Yeah.
That's very
I don't usually have a conventional first draft. I do a version of what Holly does. I write it all down and then go over the previous day's pages before I start writing. So there's never really a totally messy first draft.
Right.
Okay, ladies. So again, a follow-up. If you had any advice for aspiring writers, what would it be? It can be about, dealing with rejection or writing, or any advice that you have.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, my advice is really what I just said, is just sort of to allow yourself the freedom to just get that messy first draft. Don't worry about it being perfect. Just keep writing every day, or you can take some days off, but try to keep consistently writing and just allow yourself the freedom to be messy.
I kind of think of myself as the Queen of Rejection because I have those 200 before I got signed for my first one. And so my advice is about that. It's just a no. A rejection means no today on one piece of work from one person at a given time. It's not a judgment on you. It's not a judgment on your life. And it certainly doesn't have anything to do with the person you are as a mother, a professional, or whatever. It's just, no, I don't need this work today because it doesn't meet my needs. And so just walk on.
Yeah, that's true. It's hard. It's hard to get published. It's not easy. I would say my number one advice would be sit in the chair. If I don't sit in the chair, I can talk myself out of or sort of get in my head too much and not, let the creative process flow. If you sit in the chair, the words will come. Some days they come faster, some days they come slower, but you have to discipline yourself to sit in the chair. You're not a writer if you're not sitting in the chair and doing the work. It really is a discipline. Writing is like exercise. You kind of got to do it every day or else you know what happens.
I think that was great advice for a lot of us. So ladies, what are some other genres that you would like to write about other than like cozy mysteries? Or you would like to try writing?
It's sort of in an adjacent genre, but I do like the thrillers and I like the, probably thriller or maybe private eye type mystery or something, which is not really cozy. Those would be kind of fun.
I write historical mysteries, but one thing that people keep complaining about with me, and even with this one, is that there's too much romance. We're always there's too much romance, and I always veer a little bit toward women's fiction and people getting their lives together. So at some point, I'm probably going to sit down and write a straight women's fiction book, just because it's there, and sooner or later it'll happen.
Yeah, I love psychological thrillers. I like to read them. I like books that sort of keep me at the edge of my seat. I have written one in the past. I would like to write those more. If the opportunity should arise, I would jump all over that because I just feel like, I don't know, I like the pace of it. It's very fast paced and I like that.
Well, I'm looking forward to all of those when they come. Who are other mystery writers that inspire you?
Yeah, so my favorite is Laura Lippman. She, and I have a great reason for this because when she started out as a newspaper reporter, she started out at the same small newspaper in Waco, Texas that I did. And so I discovered her by an employee newsletter of all things. Said, oh, check out this former employee who wrote a mystery. And I read it and I loved it. And I've loved everything she's written since then. So she doesn't really do cozy. She's more of like, she had a private eye series and now she does more of the standalone thrillers. But just having somebody in the same job as I did do a mystery, I just thought that was fabulous and it was really inspirational. And so, she's my favorite.
Elizabeth Peters, she did historicals and she also did contemporary. And I read her Die for Love at my little local library when I was a kid. It was published sometime in the 80s, so I have no idea when if anybody else has read it. But it's funny and snarky, and the main character has this wonderfully dark sense of humor. And it was the first time that I'd read a mystery, because I grew up reading my grandfather's classics, that had read anything that was funny and that had this real sense of humor. And so Elizabeth Peters is my huge influence.
Nice. I would say, from way back, I have to go back to Nancy Drew, because when I was a child, I also spent a lot of time at the library, and I would say Nancy Drew was probably the first writer that could keep my interest. And so it would be like, I would just go through those books so quickly and I couldn't wait to go to the library the next time. And so I have to go revert to her. I do like Karen White too. Her the Trad Street Mysteries, I think it's called. I like Karen White too. She's great.
Very nice, ladies. Could you, whether it's in the works or just an idea in your head right now, or in the same series, could you tease your next book for us?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm still busy working on the second in the Cocktails and Catering Mystery series. It's going to be called Murder Served Neat. And so I don't want to give too much away from the first book, but my main character, Samantha, she's going to end up catering a 4th of July festival. And there might be a murder that happens there.
Mine is a working title, Live, Local, and Long Dead. Involves 2 bodies count them, 2, being found at the local Green Up Day cleanup celebration. There, in Vermont and in many northern New England communities, people go out and clean up their town on the first really nice day of spring. And they find 2 bodies in the park. And one of those bodies is of a woman who was much too close to Jay's ex and her current man. Complications ensue.
Well, I am actually working on a new series and a new location. I'm going back to my roots, and Digging Up Daisy will be coming up in 2023, and that is based in Harborside, Maine. What's that?
That's a great title.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, that's coming in 2023. So that's what I'm currently working on right now, but who knows?
So exciting. Again, I can't wait for those to come out. So
Awesome. So those last few questions were from readers. So thanks for answering those. I actually have a question because I don't read too much, I guess, cozy mystery. I don't read much mystery, actually. I'm very much like a short story fiction type of person. It's really weird. But one thing I noticed about like this genre is the titles are killer. Like they are like, how much do each of you like think of your titles? Are they super important to you, or you're like, oh, I'll figure it out later?
Well, so I came up with a title that didn't end up being the title. But yeah, I mean, you like to have a good pun in there. And then the publisher basically asked for a handful of title options, and they sort of run it through and decide which is the best one. But yeah, I mean, the key is obviously having a good pun or some interesting hook.
Yeah, one of the ones that I submitted as a possible for Live, Local, and Dead that was not chosen was Sugar House Rules, an Updike rule. But that's a little close. There's another Sugar House book, and that was a little, but Live, Local, and Dead was actually my original choice, so I was very happy that it ended up being the one.
There's a lot of time that goes into titling, believe it or not, and there's a lot of input from Crooked Lane and from our agents, and from we come up with lists, and sometimes ours make the list and sometimes ours don't make the list. So titling is a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah, and sure. I love the cozy titles. They are just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so fun. Definitely. Well, thank you, ladies, for joining Tattered Cover tonight on your birthdays, basically. Like, this is it. I am so stoked to have you all here. Dulce, thank you so much for moderating it. And sorry that I'm just taking over moderating duties, but I always ask this: where can we find you, Nikki, Michelle, Holly? Where can we find you on the internet? What's the best way to connect with you all?
Sure. So my website is michelleklump.com. And there you can find everything about me. You can find the Instagram. I can read those too. It's michelle.h.klump on Instagram. And then Twitter is at @mh_klump. And then Facebook, Michelle Hill and Klump. So that's pretty much it.
I have a Facebook author page, which is just Nikki Knight. And my Twitter is Nikki Knight Vermont, Nikki Knight VT. And also I have on my own website under my own name, KathleenMarkleCal.com, there's a Nikki Knight page. So, all things Nikki Knight in Vermont can be found there.
And I'm at www.authorhollydanvers.com, and all of my links are on my website. So, or you could just Google Holly Danvers too, it'll pop up for you.
Awesome. And Dulce, I know you don't have a book out, but where can we find Crooked Lane books? These are all your authors. Where can we find you all?
Yeah, you can find us at crookedlanebooks.com. And then you can also go to the Penguin Random House website, and you'll actually find our books there as well.
Awesome. And you can find us at tatteredcover.com. All of our handles are different. It's like Tattered Cover Bookstore, Tattered Cover Books. It's not consistent. People stole them from us. No, I'm just kidding. But tatteredcover.com is the best way to buy all of these books. They're all available, and I'll put the links to purchase in the YouTube channel. But ladies, thank you so much for an amazing night. Congratulations again on publishing. And I can't wait to do this again next time you all have books out.
Yes, please.
So much.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great night out there.
Thank you all so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we're no longer live.